إن الحمد لله الذي نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله أرسله الله تعالى بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا فصلى الله عليه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا ثم أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. يقول الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم واستفزز من استطعت منهم بصوتك وأجلب عليهم بخيلك ورجلك وشاركهم في الأموال والأولاد وعدهم وما يعدهم الشيطان إلا غرورا. وقال سبحانه وتعالى وإن كادوا ليستفزونك من الأرض ليخرجوك منها وإذا لا يلبثون خلافك إلا قليلا. وقال فأراد أن يستفزهم من الأرض فأغرقناه ومن معه جميعا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. واللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله واللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر آمين يا رب العالمين ثم أما بعد. I wanted to remind you, a couple of weeks ago I spoke about the matter of control and Fir'aun and how Fir'aun exercised his control over the Israelites and how Allah made that a narrative in the Quran to help us understand how people can sometimes try to influence or control other people and oppress other people by way of trying to control them. The word that I emphasized in that khutbah was istighfaf. And just as a brief recap, there were three major meanings of the word, was to make somebody feel weak and to make someone feel worthless and finally to agitate somebody. And it's the third meaning that we're going to pick up on this time. It's the second word that's used to describe the tactic of Fir'aun. Again, to manipulate people and to control them and to put them down and to get them to do what you want them to do or what somebody wants you to do. This is the tactic of the Pharaoh, but this word is interesting. It's called istifzaz. It comes from the Arabic word faz, and it's used in three ways in the Quran. It's actually used in three ayat, and all three belong to Surah Al-Isra. First and foremost, it's used for the shaitan himself. وَاسْتَفْزِزْ مَنِ اسْتَطَعْتَ مِنْهُمْ بِصَوْتِكَ. That you should do this intimidation and this fear. I'll dive into this word in a second. But you should engage in this act of istifzaz in order to influence others with your voice. Shaitan does whispers to us, and those whispers Allah describes as an act of istifzaz. Secondly, it's used as a way of the Quraysh intimidating the Prophet ﷺ so they can kick him out of Makkah. وَإِن كَادُوا لَيَسْتَفِزُّونَكَ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ لِيُخْرِجُوكَ مِنْهَا. So this is the Quraysh trying to engage in that same act that Shaitan does, istifzaz, to try to get the Prophet out of Makkah, get them to do what they want, to leave them. And finally, it's used again for the Pharaoh, Fir'aun himself, فَأَرَادَ أَن يَسْتَفِزَّهُم مِّنَ الْأَرْضِ فَأَغْرَقْنَاهُ وَمَن مَّعَهُ جَمِيعًا. That Fir'aun tried to engage in this act, which I'm not translating properly yet, istifzaz, against the Israelites. Now, I want to deep dive a little bit into this word and see how you and I can watch out for this thing that is so powerful that the Prophet was warned against it, that Fir'aun was able to use against his people, against the Israelites, and of course that Allah said that Shaitan will constantly use it against us. And as a matter of fact, you can learn, Shaitan was the first one to do istifzaz, and he's then trained Quraysh to do it, and of course before then he had trained Fir'aun to do it. What Allah is telling us is this satanic thing, this evil thing that is done, is not just done by Shaitan. He incites and encourages people to engage in that kind of behavior. Which is why it's important to learn about that I don't become a criminal, I don't end up following the legacy of Shaitan, following his footsteps, in engaging in the act of istifzaz, and also to recognize if it's being done to me. Not just by way of the whisper of Shaitan, but by way of other human beings. May Allah protect us. So the first meaning of istifzaz is actually to incite somebody and to agitate somebody to the point where they become senseless. The literal meaning of the word is nuhudun wambi'athun bidaght. When you squeeze something and it swells up. Like, if you have a balloon that's half filled and you squeeze and part of it swells up more than the other part, that's actually kind of istifzaz, or faz also. They say, faz al-jarhu, sala wa nadiya, fahada yakhruju ma'uhu rashhan kama bidagtin wa i'tisar. It's like when a wound or some gash you has, it swells up and eventually it pops and pus comes out. That's actually called fuzz also. And so the idea of squeezing something until it breaks open or it pops, that's the idea of fuzz, literally speaking. To describe that in a figurative sense, let me give you a kid's example. You know, siblings, especially, they know each other really well. And they know exactly what to say to annoy the other sibling. So they're sitting in the car in the back, and they're giving each other looks, and they know which look is going to set a fire inside the other one. So they're just looking, going, and the other one's going, stop it, stop it, stop it. And you're like, I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. And the parents driving the car is about to run off the road and saying, you better stop that. What? I didn't. I just looked. That's all I did. You know, but they know between the two of them, there's a communication, and that they know one sibling knows just what to do to agitate and to drive the other one mad. But that's a childish example. This actually goes further into all kinds of communication. In any relationship, you can actually know, sometimes your parents, they know exactly what to say to set you off. Well, I always thought you're a loser. Ah! And then as soon as you hear it, you lose your mind. And you have a reaction. And sometimes spouses know just what to say, just what to say that will burn just in the wrong kind of way. This is actually a kind of istifza, which you can take it. I've been taking it. I've been sitting there listening to it, and I'm eating my food, and I'm not reacting, and all of a sudden you hear the spoon fall on the plate. That's it. I can't take anymore. This, and then when somebody in a relationship does that, and they're trying to put that on you, or you're putting it on them, and they finally snap, and you say, oh, where's your Islam now? Talking back to parents? Where's your sabr lecture now? Where did it go? This is istifzaz. Agitation, inciting, to poke and prod until somebody snaps. But it's not just in speech. It can also happen in someone's personality. It could be that your parent, sometimes as parents we do this, we want a child to get 100 or get a 90 and get 100 and get a 90 and you better do well, you better do well, you better do well. And this kid has got so much pressure on him constantly, agitated by this pressure, that my entire worth is reduced to this grade I'm going to get, that they snap and then they don't want to study. I don't want to do any homework. Yell at me all you want. Get me in trouble all you want. And then you're like, why don't you want to study? This is the most important thing ever. The purpose of your existence is to get an A. You don't want to study anymore? Well, a point comes where somebody breaks. It pops. You push too hard. And so it's not just in speech, but in just agitating and putting someone down to the point where they lose their senses, which is why the word fuz was also used in Arabic for an animal, like a calf or a baby goat that's running around, it doesn't know where to go. Like it loses its purpose. It just runs around aimlessly as though it's just agitated and just doesn't care anymore. The mother is calling it, the parents are calling it, the herd is this way, it just wanders off. So it happens when you find among children, we often see among our youth as they're growing up, when they're at a delicate age, if we push too hard, they snap. And they rebel. They rebel in ways we didn't expect. Like my kid was always quiet, they never said anything. They were always obedient. And all of a sudden, I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know what's happened to her. And they talk back now, and they go out whenever they want, and they're out of control. I don't know what to do. Well, maybe because they were constantly being agitated. It may not be entirely your fault as a parent. It may not be my fault as a parent. But it may also be that there's something we did. We weren't sensitive to something going on inside. I'd like to give the example, if you see a pot burning on a kettle, and it's been boiling for a long time, but you turn the stove off. You don't know that it's burning. It just looks like any pot. You don't see a fire either anymore, but it's still burning. Sometimes you see a person, they're normal, they don't talk back, they're like everybody else, but you don't know what storm is brewing inside them. You don't know how agitated they are inside them. Sometimes some of your kids, there are some kids that talk back, some kids that that get agitated. Some of you in whatever other relationship, you're very reactionary, you're reactive. You immediately respond or don't let anybody talk down to you. And others of you just stay quiet. You just listen and you listen and you listen. You just take it in, and there's no reaction. That doesn't mean there's no reaction. There's a volcanic eruption going on inside. In their imagination, they're probably having a boxing match with you. In their imagination, they're doing all kinds of crazy things, but they're not saying it. But eventually a point comes when somebody snaps. This is istifzaz, to agitate somebody to the point where they act out of their senses. You can't even recognize them anymore. And so that's sometimes done to us. On the other side of this word, is to make someone feel rejected, to make someone feel like they don't belong. And this is part of the word istifzaz. Faza, for example, faza insanan, to dismiss somebody or to kick somebody out, to threaten somebody, if you don't do this, this and this, you're not part of the family. Then you don't belong here. We do things this way in our household. To impose that kind of control in any kind of relationship, where the one that's hearing it is afraid that they're going to be rejected. They're no longer going to belong anymore. And if they want to belong, they better comply. And on top of that, to make them feel rejected in the sense, who's going to take care of you if you do this your way? Because we're not going to support you. We're not going to be with you anymore. So you're going to be on your own. What are you going to do without us? What are you going to do without me? You're nothing without me. Once I leave you, you're worthless. And you'll hear this kind of language where you're being told, if you don't fall in line, you will be thrown out. You will be rejected in some way. Even people who love us can do this to us. Of course, I come from Pakistan, and alhamdulillah, my mom doesn't do it, but I've seen enough moms around the world that do it. They watch one too many Pakistani dramas. And if their son just does one thing or the other, they say, if you do this, from today on, you're no longer my son. Aaj ke baad to mere bete nahi ho. Really? He's still your son. You can say that all you want, drama auntie. That's not going to change. He's still your boy. But that fear and that fear of rejection, I've seen grown men that are into their careers. They have kids of their own, families of their own, still afraid of the rejectful language that might come from a parent. Still getting nightmares about that. And still acting in crazy ways because they're intimidated by that. That's a form of dhulm. It's a form of intimidation that shouldn't happen. That's not what a loving relationship is supposed to be. And as you're hearing it, you might say, I'm just taking a dig at parents. I'm not. I'm a parent myself. But this is not the kind of relationship we want with our children, where we're constantly threatening them. And this is not just about a parental relationship, even in a spousal relationship or friendship. If your relationship is constantly about, I don't want to say anything because if I do, they'll leave me. Or they're not going to want to be with me. Or they're going to get upset and then they're going to abandon me. Abandon me doesn't just mean they move to another house, but they won't talk to me anymore. They won't even look at me anymore. I shouldn't express how I really feel. This is a kind of istifzaz too, to silence you because of your fear of rejection. So to put you down. And so the final meaning of istifzaz, actually there's two more meanings, not final. The third, and there's a fourth, is to intimidate, and it's to scare, and it's to isolate somebody. To make someone feel like they're all alone. To make someone feel like if they, that their behavior or their whatever rights they have, if they fight for those rights, if they stand up for those rights, then nobody's going to be with them. Nobody will protect you. I'll come after you and nobody will be there with you. And this idea of isolation, they say in Arabic, fazza anhu, from the same origin, to isolate. He isolated himself, felt away from everybody else, to make someone feel like, we can do this to kids. You can say to a child, you're the weird one. To constantly make them feel like they're not like anybody else. And they just feel isolated and rejected and put in a corner, and they start accepting for themselves, I am the weird one. I don't belong with everybody else. Politicians can do this. And, to entire communities. Like in the United States, some politicians decide to isolate the Muslim community. And then the average Muslim youth might even feel in the school isolated, rejected by themselves, intimidated, afraid all the time, because there's nobody with them. Nobody's like them, and nobody likes them. So they have to be different. Like I remember when I went to high school, I didn't speak English. And I experienced this. I felt like constantly feeling like you're the outsider. You're the one, if you open your mouth, you say a single sentence in whatever English you know, people are going to make fun of you. You're inferior to them. You don't have the accent that they have. You don't dress like they do. You don't talk like they do. You don't think like they do. You don't eat like they do. You don't walk like they do. You don't dress like they do. You're inferior in every way. And you're made to feel isolated. And when you do that to people, you know what they do? Well, how is that a form of control? Then they don't even dress the way they actually want to. They don't speak the way they want to. They submit their entire being to conformity, to fit in with everybody else. I remember doing that myself. If I don't want to be made fun of, you know what my biggest motivation was to learn the English language? So I won't be made fun of. It wasn't because I love the English language. It was because high school's brutal. You're gonna get killed. And you don't have to get killed by a beating or a knife. You can get killed by people's words. Right? So you could just to fit in. And what happens to our children when they're constantly isolated in the communities that they live in? Not just at the level of family, even in the schools they go to. How isolated do they feel? How ashamed do they feel to even carry a Muslim name? Because somebody says, oh, Muhammad walked in, everybody. Is there a bomb squad nearby? And this third grade kid feels horrible about himself and can't talk to anybody about it. And sometimes these teachers are so unprofessional, they think it's funny. These schools are supposed to provide a safe, nurturing environment for all children, regardless of their religion. And here you have even teachers endorsing this kind of behavior, not making a big deal out of it. So this is a form of istifzaz that even our kids experience. And by the way, when you experience this as a child, it has traumatic effects in your future. It affects your personality. Some part of your mind accepts forever that you are different. You're worse than everybody else. Everybody else is better than you. You're inferior to all other people. And you're always afraid of others. You're never adventurous enough to make new friendships or connect with people because you're somewhere in the back of your head, they're always going to make fun of you. They're always going to think of you as inferior. And so you lose your courage, which brings me to the last part of istifzaz. Is actually when you do istifzaz of someone, in the literary sense, فَزَّ فُلَانًا عَنْ مَوْضِعِهِ طَيَّرَ فُؤَادَهُ. When you do if this istifzaz of someone, you've taken their courage and their motivation away. To take somebody's motivation and courage away. Allah made human beings naturally adventurous, naturally. When we're children, I like to think of it as when we're children and our fitrah is still pure, we don't have any concept of halal and haram. We don't have any concept of safe or dangerous. You tell a child, don't go near the steps. You're going to fall down. What does a kid do? What's his gates to heaven? The steps. Of all the things that are sitting on the table, there's a rubber thing, there's some food there, but there's a knife. The only thing the child wants is the knife. The one thing he can't have. And that's actually, in a sense, I know that sounds like my kid, but it's a heavenly quality because we are creatures Allah made for heaven. And when we're still in our original fitrah, then in that fitrah, everything is permissible. Everything is open. You can explore everything. And that's how we're going to be in Jannah. In this world, as we grow older, we're supposed to learn that there are boundaries and there's limits, right? But there's something innate inside of us to want to explore. And that grows into ingenuity, creativity. The most creative writers in the world, the scientists of the world, the explorers of the world. These were inquisitive children at one point. So for a child to want to encourage or to try new ideas, to try new things, that's part of the gift Allah Azza wa Jal gave them. But when you have an environment, whether it's in the family or in a society, where creativity is being stifled, where a young man or a young woman says, I'd like to study this, or I'd like to learn that, and the parents say, no, how are you going to learn that? We are all a family of whatever, doctors, or accountants, or farmers, or whatever else. You don't do this. You do what everybody else does. You make them conform. You don't let them have their own voice. And when they have a new idea, some young man has a new business idea and he wants to run with it, instead of giving him constructive criticism, yeah, these things always fail, you're going to fail. Just put them down before they even start. I often like to think if Bill Gates was in the Muslim community, he'd probably be a programmer or something. He wouldn't be who he was. Steven Spielberg would probably be like a doctor, because his parents wouldn't let him do anything else. These people that have influence all over the globe have so because they explored their creativity. And they were given an environment to do that. Istifzaz means people can't have any bigger aspirations. Know your limits. I know what capability you have, which means you barely have any. Just stay within your line. Don't people who know you and love you, people who are your own family, your own friends, when they're constantly putting you down. And they're saying, you're not listening to good advice, you should be a quitter. It's just easier that way. Just stop trying. And that's a form of istifzaz. It's very hard to fight. The Pharaoh had done that to his people. What are you going to do getting freedom? You people are going to fight? Have you seen yourselves? Just be happy where you are as slaves. And when he wanted to finally drive them out, when he saw that they're too dangerous and the Quran's subtle languages, he actually wanted to get them kicked out. فَأَرَادَ أَنْ يَسْتَفِزَّهُمْ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ. Just like the Quraysh thought the Muslims are now too big of a problem, and he wanted to kick them out, and that's part of the meaning of the word in terms of rejection. So I wanted to highlight these things because this is my second of 3 khutbahs on control. This is the way to diminish someone, to bring somebody down, and to get them to do what somebody else wants them to do. You and I don't want to be guilty of that. Not for anybody in our sphere, in our circle. And we certainly don't want to be victims of that ourselves. And maybe if you reflect on your own youth or your own childhood, maybe you were victims of that in some way. Maybe there were people around you that intimidated you, that stifled you. And if you're aware of that, then you need to learn to have the courage now to break free from that. To now come out of that. Because that's the gift Allah Azza wa Jal gave us. Inna ibadi laysa laka alayhim sultan. Notice, the Pharaoh did it, the Quraysh did it, but the original comes from shaitan. And about shaitan in those ayat, Allah said it flat out. My slaves, you will have no authority over them. This stuff will not work when they become truly my slaves. And so I want to conclude this khutbah by telling you, what does it mean to be a slave of Allah when it comes to these concepts? When somebody makes you feel worthless in the previous khutbah. When somebody intimidates you in this, as the subject matter was in this khutbah, or somebody agitates you in this khutbah, the response to all of them, all of those tactics of shaitan, all of those tactics of Fir'aun, the response to them is just one thing: enslaving yourself to Allah. Just one thing: enslaving yourself to Allah. How so? Previously I told you, when somebody makes you feel weak, in the previous khutbah, and Allah Azza wa Jal says about Himself, مَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَقَوِيٌّ عَزِيزٌ. They didn't appreciate Allah like He deserved to be appreciated. Allah is mighty, Allah is strong. In other words, you run after anything else, you'll be weak. You run after Allah and you will become strong. Otherwise, ضَعُفَ الطَّالِبُ وَالْمَطْلُوبُ. Everybody's going to remain weak. Similarly, you find, and previously I told you to feel worthless. Somebody can make you feel like you have no dignity, no respect, no worth. And Allah has given you dignity that nobody can take away. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We honored every child of Adam. All children of Adam were dignified. Whether your friend respects you or not, your community respects you or not, your parents respect you or not, your spouse respects you or not, your children respect you or not. It doesn't matter who respects you or doesn't respect you. Allah has given you dignity. That cannot be taken away from you. That can only come from Allah. People like Maryam salamun alayha understood that. People are accusing her of the most horrible thing publicly, and she's one of the most honored women by Allah at the same time. So it could be that people are humiliating you, and you're still honored in the sight of Allah. That is only understood by someone who truly becomes a slave of Allah. They're not a slave of people anymore. They're not a slave of people's words anymore. True slavery to Allah, it frees you from the impact of commentary. The comments that people make at you, you're no longer hurt by them. You're free from them. It's liberating to be enslaved to Allah. It's actually the only real freedom there is slavery to Allah. Sounds ironic, right? To be a slave to Allah means you're truly, truly free. If I'm a slave to Allah and I'm a young man, or there's a young woman in the audience that goes to high school, they dress the way they want, they talk the way they want, they make fun of my religion, they look at me funny, they talk about my skin color, they talk about my accent or whatever else. And yet when I see them, I see slaves of fashion, slaves of wanting to fit in with everybody else, slaves of low self-esteem, and I walk around because I'm not enslaved to any of those things. I don't need to prove myself to any of them. I don't need to show what I'm worth to any of them, because I'm already worth something to Allah. Allah is the one who's dignified me. Islam has given me dignity. It's empowered me. So I don't feel inferior because my shoes came from Walmart and theirs came from a brand store. I don't feel inferior. I don't feel inferior that my parents dropped me off in a rinkety car and they pulled up in a Mercedes. I feel nothing. I don't feel any sense of insecurity. Why not? Because these things I am not enslaved to anymore. I've unchained myself from them because I've accepted the freedom of the slavery to Allah. Which is why when shaitan's tactics were mentioned, Allah said, Inna ibadi laysa laka alayhim sultan. My slaves, you will not have any authority over them. It is the slaves of Allah that free themselves from these things. We don't literally, last thing I'll tell you, we don't literally have chains on us. We don't. We're not slaves to anybody. But let me tell you, some of you and myself, we are slaves to people's opinions. So much of what you do is, what are people going to think? What are people going to say? So much of what you do and I do is constantly worrying about people. فَلَا تَخْشَوْهُمْ وَخْشَوْنِي. Don't be afraid of them, just be afraid of me. Stop living your life dictated by this istifzaz, this intimidation, that you'll be alone, by the way, they try to scare you and reject you. What will you do without me? Where will you go? And when you're an abd of Allah, you're never alone. And wherever you are, إِنَّ أَرْضِي وَاسِعَةٌ فَإِيَّايَ فَاعْبُدُونَ. my land is vast, be enslaved only and only to me. That doesn't scare you anymore because Allah is with you. لا تخف إن الله معنا. Even if you're physically only and only alone by yourself, even then Allah is with us. Even then His company doesn't leave us. So none of the things that I've mentioned to you, to feel rejected, to feel scared, to feel isolated. لا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا وأنتم الأعلون إن كنتم مؤمنين. Don't be afraid if you're in fact believers. If in fact you can truly enslave yourselves to Allah. How can my motivation disappear? How can somebody take away my motivation to do, to accomplish, when Allah Azza wa Jal Himself is giving me motivation? قُلْ كُلٌّ يَعْمَلُ عَلَى شَاكِلَتِهِ. In the same surah, tell everybody, put yourselves to work in the way Allah made you. Allah made you good at some things. People want to focus on all the things you're bad at. They want to remind you, you're not good at this, you're not good at this, you're not good at this, you're inadequate, you don't have this degree, you didn't get a real job. If you went into some profession, why didn't you pick a better profession? Why did you get into this? This is like a no-name job, no-brand job, you can't even be proud of you. Is that even a degree? They'll put you down. But Allah says, Allah made you good at some things, and Allah says, you put yourself to work in the way that Allah made you. Put that noise away. قُلْ كُلٌّ يَعْمَلُ عَلَى شَاكِلَتِهِ فَرَبُّكُمْ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنْ هُوَ أَهْدَى سَبِيلًا. Your master alone, He's the one who knows who has more guidance towards a path. He's the one who controls that. So if we internalize what it means to have ibadah to Allah, then these very heavy things that I've talked to you about, this intimidation, this control that is exercised on us, this web of shaitan that is weaved, and sometimes people are a part of it, they don't even know they're a part of it. And they impose it on us and they bury us under it, then all of that will become weightless. It'll have no weight. When we truly bring our hearts at ease and find ourselves content in the slavery to Allah. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us content in His slavery. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-Hakim. الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. عباد الله رحمكم الله اتقوا الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقم الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا. Okay. What happened? أقم الصلاة.